discard process or automating the discard process in Alma, and she's over at West Georgia, and she's our very capable cataloging chair this year as well. So we appreciate all the help there. So I guess other than that, if you're ready to take it away, Miriam, then the floor is yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Sean. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about an automated discard process in Alma. So before at UWG, we had one-by-one discards, and that worked especially well in Voyager. But with Alma and with some other developments that I'll talk about, we had to change over to an automated process. So I'd like to share this with you, and perhaps it could be of some help in your own workflows if you need it. Okay. So today we're going to talk about just briefly the actual problem that led to this development of this new process, and then an overview of the solution. And then we'll talk about the pieces of the solution. So we'll look at a broad overview of the discard workflow, the preparation you have to do in analytics. There are 2 reports that need to be prepared in analytics, and then the day 1 and day 2 processes, step by step. And then we'll look at a summary of tips and tricks for implementing this particular solution in your library. So before, and this may look familiar to some of you, we deleted items from our catalog, physical items, one by one, and we would remove OCLC holdings one by one, and we would also check last copies one by one. So it was, and that worked for us for a long time. We had an automated process to remove ebooks, but not physical items. There were some developments that caused this to change. So the first one, and perhaps the biggest one, was we had a liaison weeding project that pretty much the whole library got behind. And this sent hundreds of items to the technical services work area. And this tied up a lot of space, a lot of carts. Something had to be done to move these through our area more quickly. Also, the campus surplus office asked us for title lists for the items that we were removing and surplusing for their own needs. And another factor, which was kind of always lurking in the background, was that Alma requires several mouse clicks, as you all probably know, especially to withdraw an item. So this caused discomfort if there were a lot of items to withdraw one after another, and also reduced efficiency because people would need to take time to rest. So all of these factors together led us to come up with a new system for automating this process. So here's what we came up with. So the new automated workflow has several advantages. So the first one is that you can have one cataloger withdrawing around 200 items, and it could even be more, depending on that person's comfort level as far as scanning the stuff in one sitting. We also reduce or eliminate any errors, because the errors that could occur during the system jobs that we run are caught when we review the job error reports. And then there's time to fix that problem before moving on to the next step in the process. Also, we've reduced manual repetitive motions. The only repetitive motion really in this process is the scanning of the books on the actual discard cart, and then also stamping them discarded before they're moved out to be picked up by surplus. Also, carts are not tied up as long in the tech services area, so we have carts that we can actually use for other projects. And a title list can be provided to the campus surplus office, giving them what they need. And then a very nice plus to this whole thing is that the surplus office told us that their pickup schedule is roughly 200, 250 books per week. So this acts as a natural break on our activities in technical services and prevents us from moving too quickly and possibly burning out. So what does this discard workflow look like? So here's kind of an overview of the general process. We're only going to look at the second step in this presentation because we're looking at the Alma part of it. But basically, our liaison librarians or our stack specialist will pull carts of many, many items. They bring them to technical services. And then catalogers withdraw the material and remove OCLC holdings, check last copies, etc., in a 2-day process. The third step is the archiving of the title lists, preparing the discard carts for pickup, and then we move them to a particular area in our library here on the first floor where they're picked up by asset management staff. Asset management is the actual name of the office on campus that would I call them the surplus office in this presentation, but their actual name is the asset management office. So we'll look at step 2 today in this presentation. So here's an overview of the day 1 processes. So we begin with Notepad, basically scanning the barcodes on the cart. Those barcodes are then added to a template and saved as a surplus title list for that discard cart. That same barcode file is then also used to create an Alma set upon which the withdraw items job is run. So that's day 1. In day 2, that surplus title list becomes the basis of the day 2 activities. So at that point, we would review any bibs that weren't deleted as part of the withdraw items job. We would then batch delete holdings on OCLC. We check analytics for USG last copies. And then we would export any of the surplus title lists from analytics to Excel. And then those are emailed to asset management and the carts are prepared for pickup and a request is initiated through the web form on the asset management website. And then the carts have completed their journey. So let's start out looking at what reports need to be prepared in analytics to make this happen. So the first report is in your institutional analytics. And this we named just a discard cart report template. From the template, the surplus title lists are created, but we start with the template. So what I would suggest if you're interested in doing this is to save the template in your institutional shared folders somewhere so that other people can access it. And also consider adding it to your favorites. This allows anybody to access the report from the favorites menu in the upper right corner in analytics. So they don't have to search through a bunch of folders and subfolders to try to find it. And then also something else, which may depend also on your local practice, is consider keeping these title lists in their own folder in analytics or backing them up to an institutional hard drive, which is what we do here. On the discard cart report template, and I will show you an example of what this looks like a little bit later on, but these are the fields to add. So we start out with barcode. This is the most important field because this is the field that will have the filter that will receive the barcodes that are scanned from each discard cart. So that's an absolutely necessary field. We also include a bunch of information that the surplus office requested. So we have title. I added title filing because I wanted to file by title, but they probably sort the Excel spreadsheet in a way that is desirable for them. Also description. This would give the volume and year information for each item. We also include author, we include standard numbers, and we include publisher publication information. These last fields that you see on the right-hand side column, process type, life cycle, et cetera, those we add in order to help us with our work here in technical services. And those fields are actually deleted from the surplus title list before it's sent to the asset management office. They don't probably particularly care about MMS ID and OCLC number, but we do use those fields for our day 2 processes especially. And I'll talk about how we do that. One thing to note is on the OCLC control number field, we have added conditional formatting to make that field stand out if a bib record hasn't been deleted in the withdraw items job. So this is something to think about if you're interested in doing this. We use an extremely loud, bright red color, but you can use any background you like, any formatting. It could be a text color. So that's something to think about. The second report, so the first report is that discard cart report template. The second report to prepare for this discard process is a report that's created in the network zone. And this is a last copy report template. This is actually a pretty simple report, honestly. This only includes the OCLC numbers, title, bibliographic life cycle, and institution name. And the OCLC number is the filter for this report. Just like the surplus title list, the barcode was the filter. In this report, it's OCLC number. And I'll also show you a little bit later on how this report looks when it's run. Just some tips about using the network zone to make analytics. One thing to keep in mind is that obviously we're all able to use the network zone, but one thing that is helpful is to save your institutions, network zone reports in a dedicated folder. So in our case, we have a folder called UWG NZ reports, and that's where we've put our very few reports that we've created in the network zone. Also, you'll notice in your institutional analytics that there is a folder called Galileo Network that you can access through the shared folders. Don't run your network zone report from that location because it will not give you the information from other institutions in the network zone. It will only give you your own institution's information, which will not help you for the last copy report. So always run it from the network zone analytics. Also, don't add any kind of filters other than the OCLC numbers. Don't add anything to institutional name or bibliographic life cycle that will change the report and give you a big headache. Also, don't open network zone analytics and institutional analytics in the same browser at the same time. This will cause the first analytics to kind of time out and change over to the one that you opened a new tab for. So you can look at them at the same time, but make sure that they're in different browsers. So now that we've looked at the preparation and analytics, let's look at the day one processes in a little more detail. So on day one, we're starting with the barcode file. And then as we progress, that barcode file will become the basis of two paths. It will be used to create a set upon which a withdraw items job is run. And it will be used as a filter input file to create the surplus title list. Before you begin scanning barcodes, one thing that we recommend is to tape a numbered slip to the cart, which will also be the name of the surplus title list and all of your input files. It's a really easy way to keep everything straight because there are several steps in this process. So I recommend that you do this. Also, the slip will kind of stay with the books, and it is literally not removed until we are at the very end of the process and I put the for surplus sign on the cart. And at that point, the slip is removed. So this is a way of just keeping everything straight as you work through these various steps. So creating the barcode file, in this case, I recommend using Notepad++. I know there are a lot of text editors out there. I like Notepad++. I'm not some expert in it, but I like the fact that it numbers the lines. So you have a very easy way of seeing how many barcodes are in the file and how that number matches up with the numbers on the cart. And we do compare those numbers to be sure we didn't miss something when we were scanning. Sometimes you get into the zone, you might miss something. I've done it. So this is a way that we can kind of check that. This is the file that will be used, again, this barcode file will be used for the surplus title list and also for the Alma Set that we'll run the job on. So here's the first path where that barcode file is going into the surplus title list. So at this point, you can see at the bottom here, we've added the barcodes from the file, and it's just a cut and paste operation. And at this point, we would save as and name this. This is the template, but we're going to save as and then name it into a surplus title list for that cart. Once you've done this, this is a really good opportunity because process type is one of the fields in the report to check to be sure that none of the items have a process type that needs to be resolved. So in a lot of cases, this isn't extremely common. We've had a few where we've had missing items on the cart. So those have to be handled. Usually we just scan them in and then put them back on the cart. But if there are any other process types on loan, on hold shelf, I mean, who knows what could happen. In that case, you'd want to have a chance to deal with those process types before you withdraw the item. So just keep an eye out for that. And here's how UWG resolves these issues if they come up. So assuming all your process types look good, now it's time to move on to creating the Alma set. So at this point, we name the set the same name as the slip name on the cart and also the same name as the surplus title list. And at this point, we're looking just to make a physical item set. And at this, basically once the physical item set is created and you save it, Alma will initiate a job, and then you will receive a job report in your email showing you if there were any errors. So that is the thing to look for. And here's an example of what I mean. So in your job report in your email, the thing to look for is this records with exceptions area right here at the top. That will tell you that there was a barcode in your barcode input file that was not added to the set for some reason. So check these out. If you see anything here, usually it's going to be a 0, but if you see something here, double check, run the process ID from the emailed report in Alma, and I have a little note down here of how to do that. And then from there, you'll see something very similar. You can click on the little hyperlinked number and it will show you the barcode that was the problem barcode, and then you can find it on the cart and do further investigation. Assuming that all your barcodes check out and everything's added successfully to the set, the next step is to run the withdraw items job on the set. So in this case, the really big thing to remember is to choose the parameter delete holdings, delete bibliographic records that have no other holdings. If you don't do this, everything else from this point forward will not work correctly. So that's really important to choose that particular parameter. Just like with the set job, the system will email you a report when this job completes. And again, check the report table section of the report to see if there were any problems there. So here's an example of one report snippet that had some issues. In this case, the error types are item has enumeration or chronology. These are deleted by the withdraw items job, but it still lets you know about them. The thing at the bottom, item has PO line, that is also an issue. If an item is attached to an active PO, it will not be deleted. So in that case, we would need to handle that PO. It can be closed and then the item can be deleted, but that would have to happen before the item could be removed from the system. And of course, the job won't delete them. So assuming that your withdraw items job works out okay, you don't have any exceptions or strange events, at this point, you can sit back, relax, and wait 24 hours for the ETL process to update the data in analytics. And when I say the data, I'm talking about the surplus title list because you're going to go back to that list and do some more work with it. So now let's move on to the day 2 processes for this discard cart. So the basis of day 2 activities are going to be the surplus title list. So the first day was the barcode file that was scanned. Day 2, we're looking at the surplus title list. This surplus title list also branches off into 2 paths. The one path, it serves as the list that's provided to the asset management office. In its other path, it's used to investigate bibs that are not deleted by the withdraw items job on the previous day. And it is also used to extract OCLC numbers that are used in Connexion client for batch deletion of holdings there, and also in the network zone report to check for last copies. So as far as preparing the OCLC number file, in this case, we're going to copy the OCLC numbers from the surplus title list to a notepad file. You can enter numbers only. The system ignores any characters that precede the OCLC number, prefixes, whatever. And if the surplus title list shows that any of the bib records were not deleted, this is the time to investigate those bibs. So here's an example of what that surplus title list looks like. So you can see over here, I chose one that had the huge, like loud, bright red color that we set for our OCLC number. So this would alert the cataloger right away that this bib wasn't deleted. And you can see here, it has bibliographic life cycle in repository. That's why the OCLC number cell is in this loud red color. So this is something we would need to check. So because we selected the parameters that we did for the withdraw items job, what this means is this particular bib for this first title in this report wasn't deleted, and it's because it has additional items remaining on it. So we need to investigate it and find out what those items are and if the bib really needs to have holdings removed or not. Here are some common scenarios that we've identified at UWG about why a bib wouldn't be deleted by the withdraw items job. So the first situation is that there are missing or lost items that remain on the bib. So these could be just additional copies usually. In that case, holdings should be removed because the remaining copies lost or missing, and that's our policy here. So in that case, the bib would be suppressed, and that OCLC number could just be included in the OCLC text file with the other OCLC numbers. There are also situations where you might have additional volumes of a multi-part set. For whatever reason, they remain on the bib. In that case, we ask that those be given to the serials cataloger for resolution. And then there's also a situation if additional copies remain on the bib that are actually not lost or missing. That's the most exciting example, and we jump for joy when that happens. It's an exciting thing because no fix is required, and you do not need to delete the OCLC holdings. So that's always nice to see. Okay, in Connexion Client, there are a couple things to prepare for the batch process of the holdings removal. So under Tools, Options, Authorizations, just be sure you have an authorization set as the default. And also under Options Batch, under the Tools menu, be sure you check the box next to Display Batch Reports Automatically, because you do want to have an opportunity to see that report after you've batch deleted holdings. You can also check the Print Batch Reports Automatically button if you'd like. We don't print our reports or even save them, but that is an option if you want to do that. As far as batch deleting the holdings, at this point, that notepad file that you've saved with the OCLC numbers that were copied from the surplus title list analytics report, that file is imported into this box here under Batch Holdings by OCLC Number in the Connexion Client. Once you've imported the file, you'll be asked if you want to delete the source file, so select what you prefer. I always say yes because I like to keep everything until the very end. But if you have more confidence with this, you can say no. I mean, it's up to you. And then make sure that the Delete Holdings button is checked and click OK. And the system will delete the holdings in batches of 25. After it deletes the holdings, this confirmation report will show in the Connexion Client. So this is just one example of a report. If there are any errors, they show at the top here above where it says successful actions. There will be a little area that gives you any errors. So again, just be on the lookout for that. And if any OCLC numbers were not deleted or there was some kind of problem, just check those out, investigate them before going on to the next step. Assuming that your OCLC number report checks out, everything was deleted, no problems. One of the last things we do, it's not the last thing, is we check for last copies in the USG. So this last copy check can be done at any point in the discard process. We do it at this point, but it could be done when the items are pulled. It could be done in a separate process by a collection management librarian or somebody else. This is where we've put it, but it can go anywhere. But this is one way to automate the process in analytics. There's also something called a last copy app if you don't want to get involved with network zone analytics. We don't use that here, but if you're interested in finding out more about that, check with Gil support and they can give you a little more information. So here's how the network zone analytics last copy report looks when you run it. So in this case, this left column here, these are the OCLC numbers that we provided in the OCLC number field filter for the network zone report. It pulled up, of course, all the titles, and it pulled up the life cycle status of these bibs and the associated GIL institutions. So in this case, I've highlighted this middle example here. This is an example of an item that would be a last copy. So you can see that obviously it's been deleted by West Georgia, but no other institutions have it in repository. In other words, they don't have that bib record in their catalog, which is a proxy for they don't own it. So this is what to look out for, a single row that just says deleted and then your institution name. The other thing to kind of be careful of is if you have the single row with your institution deleted, but then there's only one other institution that has a bib in their repository. I would check that out in Alma just to be on the safe side. Sometimes people have a bib, but maybe the item is lost or missing. Maybe there's some other issue with it. At that point, you're getting kind of low and there's only that one other copy. So I would check that out as well. But in a lot of these cases, we see 4, 5, 7 different institutions that own the item, and that obviously would be okay. These titles would not be candidates for last copies that need to be sent to UGA. And this is extremely rare, by the way, to find something that's a last copy, and there's no fancy work involved in scanning the report. I basically just run it in analytics and I eyeball it. And I do download it for our own files on our institutional local hard drive here, but it's very easy to tell if you have the only copy. The ending processes here are mostly going to depend on your own workflows, but here's what we do here. So in technical services, after that last copy check has been completed, we stamp the items as discarded. We delete any last copies from the title lists and remove those items from the discard carts. And then the carts are moved to the back hallway. That's this lovely picture here with the beautiful big window behind it. And they have surplus signs added to them. And then we go into the web form that asset management has online, and we request a surplus pickup. And we also email the title lists of the discard carts. And we usually do no more than 5 carts per pickup. So we could have 4 or 5 title lists, and those are emailed to our contact in the asset management office. And that's the end of the process. The carts take a few days for the asset management staff to come and pick them up. And then once they're picked up, the process starts over. So here's just a quick summary of some tricks and things to remember. Things that we've learned that help make this a little bit easier. In analytics, save your discard cart report template as a favorite to make it easy to find, and also save it in an institutional shared folder so that people can get to it, and if they need to, even change it. Although in that case, I'd still recommend having a backup in your own folder. Also, handle any assigned process types before running the withdraw items job, just so you're not removing something that maybe is needed somewhere else in the library. It's extremely rare, but it could happen. Also, check the job reports that pop up at each stage in this process. This would be the report that happens after you add your barcoded items to the set job. That'll give you a report. And then there's also a report after the withdraw items job. And then there's a report after you batch delete holdings on OCLC. So at all of these points in the process, there are opportunities to double check for any errors. So just be sure to do that before moving on to the next step. And then finally, when checking last copies, access your network zone analytics report from the network zone, not from your institutional analytics. Thank you all for listening. This is the conclusion of the presentation, so I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have. I saw some little numbers pop up under chat and Q&A. Let me just take a look here. Okay, that was Joy. If you have any questions, okay, Q&A. Okay, Susanna, do you contact UGA before sending them discards? We did a huge weeding project and sent them a list at their request. They ended up asking for only a handful and told us to discard the rest. That is a good question. We are actually still collecting books to send to them because it's so rare that we find any. So I don't have an answer for that. That's something that we will have to think about when we have enough to send. Okay, Shelley's typing an answer. Shelley has handled this in the past, and let's see what Shelley says here. Okay, Shelley has answered, Susanna, for your question. She did say, yes, we do contact UGA before sending the discards. Thank you, Shelley. Next question from Amy. What roles, other than cataloging roles, do we need in Alma to run this successfully? Oh, that's a great question, Amy. So the first thing you would need is, and this may have changed, It used to be that in order to create sets, you had to have the cataloging, make sure I get this right, repository administrator role to create sets, but I think that has been downgraded slightly. So basically you would need a role that allows a person to create a set, and you would also need to be able to run jobs. And I can look into this a little more carefully and give you a better answer after the session. And you also need the design analytics role in order to use the institutional zone analytics. Your CSU network zone account for the network zone analytics should already have the design analytics role, because that's the whole reason those accounts were set up, is to give folks access to design analytics. But if you have any trouble with that, contact Guild support and they can check your roles for you on the network zone side of things. But basically, you're just looking at roles to create jobs and also to create sets. So you definitely would need a cataloging role, but I can give you a little bit more specific information afterward. Sorry, that wasn't a really specific answer. Oh, thanks, Amy. I will get you the other info though. Any other questions, y'all?
All right, can everyone hear me?
Hey, Joy, yes.
Hey, if there are no additional questions, we'll go ahead and close out. Miriam's presentation slides are already available on the SCED platform if you all want to review them. And a recording of this presentation will also be available later on. Thank you all for joining us.
Great, thank you all so much. Thanks, everybody. Have a great conference.